Hi everyone, and welcome to my channel, the channel that I continue to call Work in Progress, Always Evolving, and the channel that have the vision of creating maybe a community, we could say, of seekers, um, those of us that are into non-dual or really, I guess, wanting to know what's going on here on some level, and maybe we can't, but we're definitely in that place of searching and seeking and working within ourselves. I think that most of us today realize that it's an inside job, that we really need to go through whatever we've gone through. We really need to identify those things, see what gets triggered, and learn to kind of go within to find out what's really going on. Why do we behave in a certain way? Why do we have certain things we absolutely believe? Where did that all begin? And so we've got to go within to discover that. And I think many of us today, just based on what's going on in the world, the intensity of energies, etc., we're going through some very we could call unique and challenging times. And what's really being required now is that we work with ourselves. So I have this vision where I'd like to have conversations with people just like you and me, everyday people, those of us that are going through these times, navigating our life journey at this moment, and have had either some challenges that we could speak about. Perhaps we've had that tipping point where somebody said something and that absolutely tipped us to a place of moving in a different direction, changing our life completely. All of us have these stories of our life. We do. And I think by sharing these stories, we then find out that we're much more alike than not alike, but more importantly, we're helping others. So, if this idea appeals to you, just check below the video because there's my contact information, and click on that and let's see if we can't start having some conversations. Alrighty. So today, what do we want to talk about? Well, I've been definitely having some interesting, I don't even know what to call them. I was going to say downloads, but maybe it's more like insights. I think that's what I would call it, some insights. And what's kind of gone on about these insights is that this whole place that I'm at of really wanting to get past being identified with this me, because I totally get it intellectually. I get there's no me here doing this. There's no me in control. But I'm living my life as if there is, for the most part, right? So it's kind of like I'm sitting on the fence, and it's very frustrating because I know this, like I said, on an intellectual level, on a gut level, an intuitive level. I absolutely know that there's no me, no false me, that no ego, whatever you want to call it. The me seems to cover it all. That's running the show here. Period. No, but that's where I'm identified. So what's been happening in these insights, that I'll call them, is I've remembered back, or have memories of some very specific times in my life that were definitely times that I remember clearly, right? They were big shifts or important times. And when I'm in that memory or remembering, I'm real clear that there's this me that I think I identify with was not in the picture at all. that the way things kind of came together, whether we want to call it synchronicity or, random, because it couldn't have been random though. When I look back at the certain adventures, let's call them, or certain events that stand out, I'm real clear that this me could not have pulled that all together, just could not, and it couldn't have even come together for like in a random way. So what I want to do today, and it's kind of a lot to share in one video, so I'm sure I'll maybe have part one, part two for this, what I want to share. But it points to definitely where I get there's no me, and it was running the show, whatever it is, in kind of putting all these scenes together, like choreographing exactly what was going to happen, when, and how. So I have to go back to a time when my husband and I would go to this place called Esalen. It's still around, very much so. It's in Big Sur in California. And we would go for these retreats. They had incredible retreats. It was an absolutely stunning, it is an absolutely stunning, beautiful place with in those days, with the hot tubs that were kind of hanging over a cliff on looking at the Pacific Ocean. The energy, you could just feel it when you'd walk into the grounds, onto the grounds. The energy just sucked out all the energy that we brought with us from the Bay Area and all the traumas and stress of work and so forth. And you just go into this other realm, I'm going to call it, magical place. And so we would go there quite often. And when I say often, they had weekend retreats, and they would have a 7-day retreat, and different people would be doing these retreats. And we got actually introduced to this place through a therapist that we were going to for couples therapy, and she did a retreat workshop there, and of course we went, and that's how we got introduced to this place. Awesome, amazing place. But the part of the story that's most important is that they had a yoga teacher. And by the way, all these people, the teachers and the people that did, the massages, they had incredible massage people. They all lived within that area, or even on the property. It was a very large property. And so one of the people that we would always take advantage of working with when we were there was this yoga teacher. And he was phenomenal. And even though we did yoga when we were in the Bay Area on a couple times a week or a weekly basis, we'd never been with a yoga teacher that amazing. And he, at some point, so we'd been going, I don't know, a couple years probably, to his yoga classes. They would happen before the retreats. It wasn't a retreat. It was just you could go in the morning before your retreat or workshop started and meet for yoga class. So at one point he decided to do a retreat out of not at Esalen. I don't even know if he was still at Esalen there, to be quite honest. I think so. But anyway, he was offering a retreat in Mexico. And we signed up for it because, again, we just loved his retreats. And so this was outside of Puerto Vallarta. We'd been to Puerto Vallarta several times because California's easy to get to Mexico for a quick getaway. And so and he said you take a boat. When he was talking there, I think he had a little, thing he was advertising this on, and that you take this boat from Puerto Vallarta, not very long, across the bay, I guess it was, and you'd come to this place called Yelapa. And that's where the retreat would be, and at that point you would be staying in Yelapa, and that it was, it was talked about how you would have dinners. The dinners would be served with your feet in the sand, and just this incredibly romantic way, at least that's how I interpreted it, of having this yoga retreat. And so, yeah, we signed up and we decided to go early to Puerto Vallarta. This was at a time when my husband and I were in, I think we were in business together at that point, yeah. And we were workaholics types, so we really needed to have a getaway. And so we first go to Puerto Vallarta a few days before the retreat's going to start. And so while we're in Puerto Vallarta, I start asking questions about this place called Yalapa, where we're going to go have this retreat. And I have, of course, like I said, this romantic view of it. And I then learn what was really what was it like and how we were going to get there. Now, in my mind, I saw that we'd be taking a nice boat, like in the Bay Area. They have these boats that, cruise around the Bay Area, and they have a glass of wine in their beautiful boats. And, that's how we'd get to Yalapa. No, it wasn't the truth. That just was in my mind. That's not how you get to Yalapa. So in talking to, the locals in Puerto Vallarta, people that own shops there, etc., I discover that where we're going to get this boat, we go and look, and I described it as a rowboat with a motor on it. And that the boat could not, forget the word, is at beach. You couldn't get onto shore there because, it didn't. And so you get out of the boat in the water when you arrive at Yalapa, and you're carrying your luggage above your head. Okie dokie. So I packed for a resort type thing. Of course, I had my yoga clothes, but I'm, again, imagining this romantic retreat. And I have nice luggage. And I say, I'm not doing that kind of boat. There's no way that I'm going to do this. The boats, they're called boat taxis or taxi boats, and this is what that was like. And I thought, no, I'm not doing that. That's crazy. And then we began to ask again about this area, Yalapa, where they're doing the retreat, and they said, oh yeah, well, every morning they've got to sweep out the scorpions before they have the yoga class. And by the way, they don't have electricity all the time. It goes off at a certain time in the evening, and then it comes on again at a certain time in the morning. And basically what it was describing to me like camping. It was a very what do I want to call it? It was like camping. I mean, we were going to be staying in some type of what do I want to call it? Rooms. It wasn't outside, but it was very close to the earth, whatever you want to call it. Well, no, I'm not a camper. That's not me. And here we finally get away after working and working and working and exhausted. That's the last place I want to be, where this thing sounds, just not my cup of tea. And so I tell my husband, I can't do this. Once we saw the boat, and I know about the scorpions being swept out, and I'm hearing about the electricity goes off, at this certain time, and it's just a really, not the kind of retreat I was expecting. And I'm standing in the middle of the street in Puerto Vallarta crying and saying, I can't do this. I'm going home. You can go to the yoga class. I just can't. This isn't where I'm at. I don't want to do this. So anyway, at that point, my husband tries to find other ways to get there. Like, you couldn't get there through, it's not like you couldn't drive there. I forget the deal, what it was. But anyway, and he was trying, could we get another type of boat, blah, blah, blah. Couldn't, and wouldn't. When done, I didn't want to do it. So that was the beginning of starting to see how things were really happening without this one being in control at all. In fact, the me wasn't even there, in a way. I mean, that's how I feel. And so from there, we ended up staying in Puerto Vallarta, we moved from the place that we had first come to, which was this fancy, great place, supposedly not. We didn't like it there, so we moved to a place more in town, and we were able to get this kind of like a little villa, and we had our own little swimming pool. And again, we're in Mexico. This isn't fancy, right? But it's nice, very nice. And we're just hanging out in Puerto Vallarta because we're there, and we had 7 days before we were going to fly back home. Or actually, it was maybe more than that because I think the retreat was 7 days. So we probably had 9 or 10 days total. And so we were just going to say, okay, this will be our, vacation. And through this time, it was strange how we would meet people that were a lot of Americans or Canadians that were living in Mexico, on like retired people, in inland, not at a resort area. And we start, I don't know, meeting these people out of nowhere, it seemed like. And they're talking about, where they're living in Mexico, etc. And so we think, wow, that sounds kind of cool. They're living there. And then we get the bug to look at a timeshare there. That's what it was. Or also look at even properties that you could buy. I think that's where we went. We went to timeshare meetings. These were all going on. We're looking, something's going on as if we're looking for a change in our life, which we didn't go there with that intention at all. So all these things were put together, all of these little events, which really you don't need to know the details of, but just to kind of understand how there's no way I could have choreographed or planned that we're meeting these people and that we put an offer on. Actually, it was a home, not a timeshare. And what are we going to do with this home? I don't know. I mean, it was like, why are we doing this? But we were doing it. That didn't make sense. Why are we putting an offer in? And we worked with this real estate guy that was also an American and but lived in Puerto Vallarta. And he was a cool guy. He had a really nice boat. We really get to know him. And so he starts taking us around the area of Puerto Vallarta, different little locations to look at homes. And we find this home that we fall in love with. Not a huge home, but they had rooftop living and the beautiful weather. And so we put money down on it. What are we going to do with it? Well, you could rent it out if you're not here, supposedly. And then, one of us, I think it was my husband, that said, well, maybe we could move here. Now we're in business together, right? We have a business that is headhunters. We're headhunters. We work with, in the Bay Area with startups in helping them put together their executive team. So we end up, like I said, putting some money down on this property for no particular reason. We do keep meeting these people that seem to be living in these areas that happen to be, these are retired people. We're not at a place to retire. And yet this is what's going on. We're going on with this whole routine. We get back to the Bay Area after this whole thing's over, and realize, I don't think we should, it doesn't make sense we'd be buying a house like that. We back out. We couldn't get the down payment. It wasn't a big down payment thing. Homes are very inexpensive there. We hadn't put down a lot of money. But, it was money. Anyway, we got out of the deal, but had to lose whatever we put down. And from there, my husband says, I have an idea. Why don't we since we have never been to these inland areas in Mexico, we could research and let's see and take a 6 or 7 week period. Now, we've barely ever taken a week for vacation before all this. And just check it out and see what's going on. And maybe we could do something there and blah, blah. And I'm going along with this idea. Really? Yeah. Okay. Let's give it a shot. And so that we find he does the research, and this is before, this is late, right before, let's see, um, it was around 2000, I believe, yeah. And anyway, he's doing the research and he's figuring out where we can go, and he tells me this is an area outside of Guadalajara. But we can take a spa when we go to Guadalajara. We'll go to a spa there first, a very nice spa area supposedly, and then we'll rent a car. Or no, we don't even need to rent a car. I think the deal was you can take a cab, taxi to this place called Ajijic, and let's check that out because it's an area where but a lot of Americans, Canadians, some Europeans have retired to or go there part time, blah blah. And so all this starts happening, and it sounds like, it feels like this is happening on its own. I had a lot of moments when I would think, this is so strange. And it wasn't all fun at all because, like, the spa we went to was not, again, not my imagination of what the spa was going to be. And it was very hot there, and it was higher altitude, and so people were getting altitude sickness and dehydrated and not doing well and yada yada. And so it was like we got through with this spa thing, and then took this cab to this place called Ajijic, and we get there, and it looks very much of a, little Mexican village. Can't quite figure out why people are retiring there, but right away, as soon as we get there, we start to meet people that are there that have retired. Because we go to lunch. Oh, we get there and some celebration was going on, and the cab person couldn't figure out where we were staying at this hotel, which was all again done online at the time. And so there was this screaming and yelling, and it was crazy. And that night, that sounded like gunshots. It wasn't. It was firecrackers, but I didn't know that. And when we got to this place to check in, there was nobody to check us in. There's the key in the door, and that's how you get in. Just weird stuff. But this is what's happening, and and then in the middle of the night, I'm saying, I want to go home. I got to get out of here. This place is crazy. But, we're there for this, I think, 6 or 7 week adventure. So, from there, we start, like I said, meeting these locals that are living there. And we actually start getting invited to different parties of these people. And things are just kind of happening this way without any kind of intention or thought of what's going on. This is what was going on. And in fact, when we end up leaving, decided we don't want to stay at that hotel place that we were at. So we start checking out other places, and we then meet a gentleman, Jose, who just kind of comes out of the blue. I don't even know how we meet him, and he says, "Oh, come, you can stay here. Come see our hotel." And this is a place you could stay in. The place was kind of under some construction, but he was great. And he said, I can show you around, and you can check places out. And the other thing that we were trying to do on this trip was, it says, that the story was you can visit Mexico and for so much little bit of money every daily, and you can do this in a very inexpensive way. So my husband, this is what he said, well, let's try to do it that way, and then an expensive way, and then we can stay longer. And so anyway, we end up at this hotel, which is really funky. But we have Jose, who's really, he's a Mexican, but he speaks perfect English. And he'd worked for the airlines, and I think now he was no longer with the airlines. He was the hotel manager. Okay. And so this was another piece that just everything was falling in line in such a, I don't know, strange way. Like just falling in place, like meeting the people that we would meet, the gringos, that were retired there, and then getting invited to parties, and then we meet another couple in, I forget what we were doing. I think we went on a tour of homes, and they were from New Orleans, and we get to be really connected, fast friends with them. Great couple, and all these things are happening. And we end up then finding, when we don't want to stay in this funky hotel anymore, we're taking a trip to a place called San Miguel Allende, and that is about, I don't know, 3-4 hour drive, and to stay there for a few nights. This is a charter club thing, or whatever they call them, that you sign up and take the trip. And now while we're on that trip, we meet this person that's got this beautiful condo overlooking the lake, because this Ajijic on the largest lake in Mexico. So she says, "Oh, here we are in this little van, all of us that are taking this tour and going to San Miguel and staying in San Miguel a few days." She says, "Oh, well, I've got this great condo and I'm going back to Canada. You're more than welcome to rent it. I can rent it, quite inexpensively, blah, blah." And so we say, "Great, we'll be back." I forget when, because we were going to go on to visit some other cities near San Miguel, and weren't going to return with the group. All this is happening. It's just happening. And so we end up getting finally back, and I end up feeling really sick in San Miguel at some point, and realize I'm dehydrated. I mean, it was one thing after another. So again, it wasn't all magic, but it was weird and strange in how these things were coming together. And anyway, we get back to Ajijic after investigating these few things and a few areas, and decide, you know what? Why don't we just stay here? We've met people, and then we start looking at real estate. There it goes again. We're just looking at real estate, and we meet this guy named Tony, who's from Texas, who's living there, and he's the real estate guy that's showing us around, and we're looking at a lot of different properties. We put a couple offers in that don't go through, thank God. And finally, so at this point, my husband's saying, "Well, why don't we just move here? We could sell real estate here." And the whole thing seemed bizarre. Like, really? Sell real estate here? Okay. Yeah, things are kind of slowing down right now, just the economy, etc. And, we could just kind of think about, let's just check it out. And so we're looking at homes, right? We're checking out these homes. We're putting in, I mean, that thing is just happening. But every other day I'm saying, I can't do this. I don't want to live here. I can't do this. And he'd say, okay, I could do this. I love it. I could do this. It's an adventure. But I'm not going to push you. Definitely, you need to want to do it. And so every other day I've got this thing going on inside of me, this argument. And at some point I decide, I can't. And so we met many good friends, became good friends with some people that had just moved there not very long ago from Canada, and then this couple from New Orleans that actually found a house and bought it. They went there with the intention, they're retired, right? And so they bought their house, and so anyway, we have a few of these people to the condo now that we're renting over for dinner. And it was a beautiful condo, yeah, on a really kind of quiet area of Ajijic. And we happened to meet to introduce these two, because they didn't know each other, and said, we're not going to come. It's not going to work out. We've looked at a bunch of houses, but anyway, it just doesn't make sense that we would do this. And so this was about a week before we were to leave, and so we wanted to introduce this couple. And again, we're meeting these people in just absolutely strange ways, and it all seems to be just happening and falling in place. And then right before, I think 4 or 5 days before we're going to leave, we find this home that we fall in love with. It was just stunning. And it was in the village, which was unique in its own way. Anyway, we put an offer in on this house, and we would make deals like we're not going to go over a certain price, blah blah. Anyway, and they at first was rejected, and then at some soon they, we're leaving, we're getting ready to leave. We said, well, if this thing ain't happening, we're leaving, we're not coming back. Wasn't willing to come back and rent. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. We have a dog and we have a cat, and I don't want to rent. No, no. Anyway, so here are two people that never made this plan, never had this plan in mind, and yet all of these things are happening, right? And it ends up that offer gets accepted before we get on that plane and come home. We come back, we get the house on the market. People and our family and friends thought we'd lost our minds. We subleased, I think, our office for a while that we had for our business, shut down the business. And that is how we moved to Mexico. And I'll tell the rest of the story in another video. Maybe I'll make this part 1 and that'll be part 2. The whole point here is this was a time where there was no me planning, organizing, controlling anything. It was if we got pushed into another realm and all this stuff was just happening, like perfectly choreographed, perfectly planned. We couldn't have planned it in any possible way. It was like a mystery, and it was confusing. And, for me, it was like, I don't really know that I want to live in Mexico or live in this area or move in a way. And I loved our house that we had. Now, this was a time where prices had gone, prices are always going crazy in California, but this was a time where they had been going crazy. And then, we were coming to a place where the economy, it looked like we were going to have a recession and so forth. And so, but we were able to sell at pretty much the top end then, and decided we were going to go be in real estate. And I think, we now knew from our friend Tony, that was our real estate guy, we would join his company. It wasn't his, but that same company. And often running, and a whole bunch of stuff happened in between then and that, but that was crazy. That was insane. Trying to get out of the house, having garage sales, trying to get rid of things. Oh, and the other thing, during this time, we now tell our friends from New Orleans that we're coming. We're going to come there too. And so with them, here they are in New Orleans, we're in California, but we make plans to come at the same time and to meet in, where did we meet them? I guess Laredo. Yeah. So they get to Laredo. That's before you cross the border. And that was the way they said was the best way to come. And that in itself is a whole other story that I'll save for the next video. Again, all of this happened without a me. It was happening. It was like life just picked me up, put me in this realm, and here we go. And in that time frame, it felt like there was no me making decisions. Now, that doesn't mean I was awakened. I'm not saying that, but it's a time when I can look back and say, yeah, that was a time where just life was flowing, and like we were on a river and it was just flowing us down this river, and here are the things that are happening, and here's what happened from that. Wow. So I wanted to share this with the idea of saying, I think where most of us kind of get into a struggle is we think we are in control here. There's a me in control. There's a me making decisions. There's a me that makes it happen or not happen. And that whole experience that I'm just told you about was very clear. There was no me there. There was decisions being made, but not by a me. yeah, it just, when I go back to that time, I get it, that there was no me, there we were just in the flow somehow of life happening, and whatever we came in with to learn or do, this must have been in the plan, because never in my life had I ever thought of even going to any other country to live. Never did I think I wanted to be an expat. It just never would be there. The only place that I ever wanted to go and got there was California, because I wasn't born in California, and I just, from a young adult, early, before even being an adult, I just knew I wanted to go to California, and that happened also in a very, yeah, same way, where life just took over. I think I've talked about it in some of my other videos. So, hopefully this made some sense. I know it's kind of, I was trying to put a lot into this video, this story. So I hope it made some sense, that the whole point of this is that sometimes life picks us up, takes us where it's going to take us. And how did that happen? How did that happen? It was planned by something, to work these things out. And I do know, even though I'm not living that way at this moment, that that's how life is. That what's ever happening in my life at this ever moment, or each now moment, has nothing to do with me. It's just life. But I then begin to interpret it, what it is, and that's where I'm having my whole other experience, rather than just being in the flow of life. But in this story I just told, this was that kind of adventure, if you will, or experience, that's a better word, experience of really kind of going off the deep end with not ever planning to do this. And, you know, when people were shocked, I don't know how that affected me. It was like, I know, why are they so shocked, in a way? I don't know even how to explain that. When we come back, like, to our family and friends, and we never talked about doing something like this. It wasn't a plan that was ever in the works. None of it. Crazy. So, again, I hope this made sense in terms of maybe experiences that you've had like this, where you, the same idea, like you're just kind of taken off into a certain other realm. I mean, I don't know. Out of all of our friends and so forth, or even acquaintances, most people weren't doing things like this. And yeah, I mean, when I look back on those kinds of times, let me say it that way, which were even before I had met my husband here in California, there's other times like that I've experienced, but this was a biggie. So I will probably do another video following this one about then this whole, what happened in Mexico for me was the dark night of the soul. Yet we were there for 12 years. Yeah. And we've been back now in the States for about 10 years. So it isn't that long ago, right? But feels like it. So, first of all, please, if you like the video, click like. I hope you are subscribing to my channel. If not, please click the subscribe button. And then you'll also, there's that little deal next to the subscribe where it alerts you to when new videos are coming out, which pretty much are every other day. And also reminding you, if maybe you've got something to share, like this idea where you've been kind of just picked up and taken, your life took on a life of its own, so to speak, or something similar to this, or where you've had this sense of, there's not a me here. Or maybe you've already been able to move through that and you're living your life knowing there's no me. I would love to have a conversation with you. I really would. It would help. I know it would help others so much and kind of give people some hope at this time, or some inspiration, to share any of these stories. And, I always say to find out we're much more alike than not alike. And, you know, through these conversations, we can learn a lot. So, in the meantime, until next time, take care and we'll see you soon. I'm going to click this off. Maybe I'll click it off in one time instead of having to go click, click. Alrighty, take care, everybody. See you soon.